Welcome back. Now let's modify this our authentication application a bit. Instead of using our username and password, let's build a system that we can log in and authenticate through our Google account. And if you don't have a Google account, you can create it or you can use other services, but this example is with the Google account. So I have now modified our code a bit, so I have removed here all the image uploading things and such. We are now only focusing on the authentication with Google, so we do not have image database. Let's call this, let's say, auth with Google or something like that, whatever. And we are needing a few new packages here, but first of all, let's do the things we need to do with Google Console. So to get here, we are wanting to here to get a Google login button. So we need to first go to Google Cloud and Google Dashboard and start a bit things there. So we are now required to do a new project. So let's create this new project. And let's call this Ava test project. Let's create it. It takes a while. And now we have this advanced web application test project. So we can go to the API and services, and then there are these credentials. So we would need to create the credentials, and we are using this OAuth client ID. So there are different things, but this is what we are now using. And first we need to configure our consent screen, so we are applying all what we are doing. So we are doing external things, anyone can log in. So our app has some name, it's Ava test project. I'm using the same name here. And my email is absolutely fine. And I need to also write my email here. Then I can save and continue. So then there are other questions. We do not need to put anything here. We can just save and continue. And here we can also click just the save and continue. And now everything is ready. We can get back to the dashboard. And now we can go again here, credentials. And now we have a way to actually have these credentials. And we are doing a web applications. Who would have guessed that? But also we could have a desktop applications or a Android application, but in this course and this case we are using the web application. And this is just a, let's say, Ava login. And then we need to authorize JavaScript origins. So what we are putting here, we are having here, let's say, HTTP localhost. So our application is now living on a local host when we are developing it. So the local host needs to be there. But we can also add the port here. I'm not quite sure if the Google is now using 5050 somewhere, but at least I was using this 8000. So let's have that there. Was it 8000? We can check it here. So I'm using 8000 port. So let's have it that there. And then the authorized redirect URLs. So here we also need to have a local host. And here we have auth /Google/callback. And then we are also adding this to this 8000. So now our application should work. Now we can create it. And here we have a client ID and client secret. And I'm just copy pasting these to the .env file. So we need to have these in the file. And what are these? So these are Google client ID, and the second one is Google client secret. So these are the API keys we need to use. Then we will also need a third one here. So we will add a Google callback URL. And this is auth/Google/callback, like that. So now our .env file has new things. And would it be nice that I push these to GitHub? No, that would not be nice. So let's add here in the git ignore file that our .env file is not pushed to the GitHub. So it's now ignored. So these are my private secrets, which I of course will remove from the internet. These won't work after I have recorded this video, but now they work, and now we have the client ID in there and such. So the next thing is to get that actual button. We can go to this kind of a URL, developer.google.com/identify/gsi/web/tools/configurator. So here we can generate a button for our web page. Can we get rid of that? So our client ID, so we have here the ID, so let's have it here. So what we are doing a sign in, and this is the login URL we are using in our application. So we are using something like users. Let's see, was it users? No, it was actually user login and Google. Let's have something like this. Then let's next, and we are enabling the sign in with Google button. That's what we are wanting, and we can use these default settings. We could modify it so we could have some kind of a black button or a blue button or anything like that. Actually, this sounds nice. Let's take that, and then just get the code. Now we get the code that we need to copy paste, and this is going to the login page. So here we have the login part and our own login button, but we can add here also now the Google login like this, and then we need to of course add these scripts that Google is providing. So I'm just copy pasting here a new script. So this is Google account client script we are using. And now our application should have the Google button. Let's refresh. Yeah, it's in Finnish because I don't know, my operating system is in English and all my applications are in English, but the button is still in Finnish. I don't know why. Maybe we could have this actually. Well, I'm moving it inside the form. Would it be nicer? Yeah, it's a bit nicer. So let's take that. Now we have the button, but it doesn't work. So I can try to log in, but let's see what happens. So we do not have this part of the code, of course. We haven't done it. So let's continue with that. First, we will need some new libraries. So let's install them. So we are using Passport. So in the few videos back we made the authentication by ourselves, but now we are using the Passport because it's helping us a lot. Passport, yeah. And also this Passport Google OAuth 2.0. Let's get these ones. And similarly, we will also need the TypeScript definitions. I'm just copy pasting here the two, and now you can see that we have 5 vulnerabilities. We could fix something probably. Yeah, now it sounds better. And this is now like this front end is completely working. We can close that. And here we have everything we need. So we are now using Auth with Google. Well, this is way too. Let's just have a Google Auth database. Maybe this is better. And then we will need to have the middleware that is used when we are using Google Auth. So we have here the middleware validate token. Let's add a second one. Google passport config.ts. This is something we need. And let's see what else. So as we have now the passport, we can then get this file imported. Let's call it a passport. Like this. And yeah, passport. Now we need to do some configuration with that. So here we can just have an app use passport.initialize like this. And now let's go and configure that. So first let's import these 2 libraries that we already imported to the project as a Node.js libraries. So passport, and then we are taking strategy and profile from passport Google Auth. And we will finally export this like this. But now we need to build the strategy that is used when we are authenticating through Google OAuth. So we will build new strategy object. So we have the client ID, and this is saved in our .env file. It's called the Google client ID as string. Similarly, we will also need the client secret and the client, it's actually not client, just call back URL. So this was, this is ID, this is secret, and this is call back URL. Yeah, then we are having some access token. No, access token, it is a string. We have a refresh token, it is also a string. And we have a profile, which is profile. Done. And then some more, so we can now log these, all these, to check that everything is working. Access token, access token, I'm having a typo there. refresh token and then profile. Like this, and then we need to return this actual object, so it is done with parameters null and profile. And that's pretty much all. So this is how you use Google OAuth through Passport. So this is fine. But we have this validate token. Let's see, there was no modification, but this user model requires a bit modification, because now we have only the user name and password, but when we are using Google ID, we will get the Google ID like this. And now the password is anymore, it's not mandatory, because we might have password or we might have Google ID like this. So this is not required anymore, and we can have the Google ID here. So it's a string and it's not required. Now we have all the middlewares and settings built. Then we will actually need the login part, which is of course living here in our user route. So our router will take care of few things. We will have a post call and get call. So the first one is when the browser is calling something. When we press the button, we have this user/login/Google, and here we will use this passport. It has a method authenticate, and we are giving it parameter Google, and the second parameter is JSON scope, and this scope is a array which has this profile. Nothing more. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's using the profile. But then the bigger part is the authentication process, the callback. What is being done when the Google says that, okay, this user actually exists, you can have him or her in your application. What we are then doing? So we are getting something, and this is auth/Google. Now I'm quite not sure where did I even put that text, because now we are using yeah, this is not correct right now, so we need to have a user here. As this is the user router. So out/Google/callback, and in our .n we have this out. So first we have user here. Yes, and I'm missing slashes here. Yeah, so this is the callback. We are using this middleware passport once again, authenticate Google. So the default with Google Auth is that it is session based, but we are defining that this is not session based, so false. We are using JWT, and then if we have a failure, redirect, we can then redirect directly to this user login. Then this is async function, and we have the request and response Then comes the code. So basically, now we know that we have a user. We should somehow put it to the database. So we do not have a password anymore, but we have the Google ID now. So first, we are trying something and we might catch some error. Let's build this catch part first. So there might be error, it might be any type. And I'm just once again copy pasting these error parts. So we are basically using console error and returning the response status 500. So in the, by the way, in the newer parts of the Node.js and Express, this return keyword is not accessible here, so we can remove it if we wish, but I'm using that old that it's still accepted, but it's not mandatory at all. Yeah, so what we are doing here, so we are once again trying to get the user. This might be user or it might be null. So let's get that, find one. And now we have the, am I having too big font here or what? I find one, and we are giving a parameter JSON, and we have this Google ID. We have this Google ID that's in the database setting, and now we need to get the parameter, and that's in the request user as ID string ID, and then we have this JVT payload, and now it's empty. So yeah, here as we have modified the password as it's not required anymore, we have slight errors here, so this user password we are taking it as a string. Now it is a string, and of course this user is typed iUser. Yeah, I have plenty of errors here. Now it sounds a bit better, and the bracket is in the incorrect place. Now it's completely working. So now we have here the user, and then we have the JWD payload, which is now empty. But here might be the case that this user is not found from the database, but we are still logging in because we have the Google. Google has said that this user is okay. So let's check that if this user exists, or actually we are checking that if it's not existing. Now we can then create it. This is quite simple. Now we have the username, and then we also have the Google ID. Now we do not have a password, we have just a Google ID, and these can be taken from the request user as display name string display name. So Google is providing us some kind of a display name, and we are using that display name as our username when we are saving this to database. And this of course should be here. And this Google ID goes quite similarly. So we have the request user as, and now we are taking ID. Now ID. So this ID is then used here as a Google ID. And then we can also populate this JWT payload. So it's username equals this new username and ID is this Google ID. Now this is working. Now it's creating a new user for us. And if the case is that this user already existed, so he is just logging in, so then we can just use these 2 lines here. Now we have already no new user, but user, as we had this user. Like this. So the user wasn't empty, so we can then get those values from the database. Then let's sign this. If I recall, it was a secret. Yeah. And let's make it expires in 5 minutes. And then just response redirect index HTML. And let's give this token here as a parameter. Like this. And now I'm saying that this might be working. It should be working. Let's go again to this login HTML page. And of course our server is not running at all. This should be expires in. Now it's written as it's supposed to be, and our server is up and running, and we can see the login form. And now I'm trying to log in with my Google account. So we cannot get that kind of index HTML, which is probably quite sure. But this redirect doesn't work because we got way too much stuff in the URL. But let's see, it's still working. I have now logged in. Here is my ID and some kind of other values and things like that. I will skip blur these things. Yeah, and it is working. So now we need to check what is in the database. So let's check this, what we have here. So I am here. So I have this Google ID here and there is my username. So I have now logged in through my, or actually in a way registered, because now my account has been accepted here in the database and saved there, and I can now then log in. Then let's fix this because I'm not having a slash here, so that's why it got that far off. Okay, now my browser is getting pretty much updated, so of course we do not have this index.html, we should have test.html. So let's once again try this again. So yes, now it worked and it redirected us to the correct place. Now I don't have even the code that is producing the active users, so there is nothing, but it doesn't matter, it's just okay now. So it is a good thing to point that is it really necessary that you build your own authentication service and you store the password, or even they are hashed, or should you trust some third-party authentication like Google authentication or Apple or Microsoft or Facebook or whatever? Would that be better? I don't know, but it's at least easier that user can just log in with his or her favorite account and then use the service directly with that. And this is a short example how you can do it with Google account and Google authentication with this OAuth 2.0.